everybody, and welcome back to Salty Runback, here to be your weekly intake of North American Developmental League of Legends. We are back after a brief hiatus, and we are here for episode number 100. Triple digits of Salty Runback. Oh man, what an exciting time this is, as we couldn't come at a better time, as we are wrapping up the final week of the regular season for the NACL. The OQs have just been announced. We might talk a little bit about that. And of course, CLOL Top 4 about to take place, as well as we have 2 more series or 3 more series to decide our road to Raleigh. My name is Grapes, joined alongside Hawk. Hawk, how are you doing today?
Grapes, I'm doing very good. It's been a wild few days. Salty Runback has not been able to come out recently. We tried to record actually at 99.5 earlier this week, and then I fucked up the audio, and so now here we are.
And so a lot of the topics that we'll be talking about, we already have kind of discussed. However, that has been lost to the ether. I will say we had some pretty good points there. So hopefully we're able to bring it again.
Usually when we re-record, it's better the second time. So
because this is not the first time that this has happened. We've definitely done this in the past. If we are reflecting a little bit on 100 episodes now of Salty Runback. Again, a huge thank you to all of you who have been tuning in from the start, or if you're just tuning in from the start of this year. It means a lot to be able to talk about what we love, which is competitive NA Developmental League of Legends, and have people listen and contribute and be part of the conversation as well. Just some scheduling stuff got in the way from last week, and then of course from the start of this week. But we are here for our 100th episode. We're going to be talking about all the news that has been going down over the past 2 weeks and change, and of course also doing a little bit of reflecting as we look ahead to what is also a nice rest of the season to come.
Yeah, 100 episodes in, and Hawk still can't get the audio right. It's okay, guys. Maybe for 101 we'll be able to do it. But I mean, it's pretty incredible how far we've come. Now, Grapes, I feel like we've been cheating a little bit in 2025 with our double releases. Like, we started at episode 60-something, I think, this year.
And our first episode of the new season was 72. So
72. Yeah.
29, 20-something episodes since then, almost 30.
So we've cheated just a bit this year. But what a ride it's been. Seriously, a massive, massive, massive thank you to everyone that has supported us along the way. It is always our favorite thing whenever a player or a coach or just anyone in the space tells us that they listen or watch Salty Runback, and or they might not even say that directly, but they'll talk to us about something that we said, and they'll call us out or whatever. And it's my favorite thing ever, because ultimately that's what it's all about. It's not about being, our voices being right or wrong, but simply having voices in the space. And it's an incredible, incredible thing to know that a lot of people value that. So thank you to everyone that's been tuning in. If you have been, but you've not subscribed, you should do that, because it'd mean a lot to us.
Like, subscribe, do all that normal YouTube stuff. Let us know in the comments your favorite Salty Runback moment, potentially, throughout the past 2.5 years or so. We'll make sure to reflect on some of that at the end of this episode as well. Subscribe to our Patreon, which is where, of course, we have that exclusive content coming out every single week. Probably another episode of CLOL Office Hours in some capacity. Haven't exactly decided how we're going to do that here for Top 4, but should be a good time nonetheless, as we are getting down to the wire here in the collegiate season. And some more stuff to come out there as well. I know that we have been a little bit slow on figuring out how exactly the schedule for things that specifically involve the players end up working out. But I think once CLOL is over, once we get into this next split, it's gonna start to pick up a little bit more. So make sure you stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah, that's the goal. Also, join the Discord. The Discord community has been fucking bumping over the last couple weeks. I can't even keep up with all the messages. That's how much it's bumping. So shout out to everyone that's already there. And if you want to be a part of it, click the link in the description. But Grapes, it's episode 100. We should get on with the show, because we got a lot to talk about, a lot of reminiscing to do at the end. But before we get there, one of the dumbest and most beautiful Patreon headlines we've ever had.
Yeah, so if you subscribe to our Patreon, you can get the option to request some headlines that we can talk about on the show every week. And one of them was the age-old question. At this point, we're a little bit behind the trend.
Yeah, I know.
We're still fine, because it's still a very important question, obviously. And I can't even credit a single person for who would, actually be the one to suggest this one. I think Collimer kind of low-key was the first one, and then there was a lot of good discussion among some of the rest of the patrons here. But essentially, what we want to ask here in this thought experiment, there's the age-old question: 100 men versus the Gorilla, who wins? 50 NACL players playing this split versus the Gorilla. Who's coming out on top? Who are you taking?
Yeah, 50 nerds versus a gorilla. That is like at best half the manpower. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think NACL is even reaching that half the manpower mark. First of all, I need to make something very clear. I am a staunch believer in that the 100 men would absolutely fucking destroy the gorilla. Like, and
Oh yeah.
I think I think you don't understand biology and large numbers if you disagree. So, knowing that and that the 100 men are like overwhelmingly favored, I still feel like 50 men is like, even though it's half of that, like it's still a lot of people. So, like, it's not just a total loss, but I will say, looking at the NACL slate this year, you know, we always have a fair share, a majority of our total dweebs that we love here in the space, but we've also had over the splits some gym rats, Grapes, but I feel like we're kind of missing our gym rats in this thought experiment just because of the demographic of NACL this split. We don't have as many like fit posters this year.
Yeah, Tenacity not being a part fully of the starting rosters definitely hurts a little bit. Niles, Surdy, Auto Orange, like throughout the
Yeah.
years, there might have been some better options to stick up there in the
We
battle
might
against
have
the
had some more
Gorilla.
captains, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I still think that 50 people is just so
It's
many
a lot of
people.
people.
And despite the fact that maybe our representation is not like our strongest or our peak in terms of even League of Legends players that have been a part of the NACL in the past, we still I think we still got it. I
Okay.
think our NACL guys still got it. I think, you know, who's your big leader? Who's the people
Yeah,
who
like
really have
who's the
to take a
captain?
step?
I
Yeah.
don't know. And now there's two questions here. Is it who's like the just the captain of the NACL, or is it like who's the most swole? Because if I had to guess, I think Shogo is probably the most like swole in the NACL right now. I can't think of anyone else
Ooh.
that has
Dardoch
been
is
like
kind of just like
notably hitting the gym.
regularly set up, I feel like. He's pretty
Wait, who
up
is
there
this?
maybe. Dardoch
Dardoch?
potentially in there. Other than that,
Yeah.
I'm trying to like go through the rosters right now
I
and
can't
figure
think
out as
of
well.
anyone that's like actively like built in the NACL otherwise right now, but I could be wrong.
But yeah, it's not necessarily built, right? Like
Right.
if you're fully just like if you got like a six pack, but you don't have like the full real strength to take on a gorilla
Right.
like head on, that's not gonna do you much good, right? And so, I'm looking at, I think like I've seen some pictures of Low Jazz like at the lands and stuff. I think he's like 6'3". He could
Okay.
definitely be
Okay.
a big player
I
here.
learned yesterday
Um,
that Low Jazz's name is also Ben, by the way. So
mhm.
that means he's also got a boost. Right
True. I
there.
don't know if the gorilla's gonna care much about that, but like,
But
it could be
the
helpful.
morale you really have to consider the morale, Grapes. Like
I feel like Rhino could also be a big playmaker here, and Zazel.
mm.
So some
Oh,
support
Fear the
players.
Beard. Yeah.
Yeah, the front line potentially here for our guys. I think we got it. I think we got it. Long story short.
I think the boys got it too. 50 NACL players. If there was ever any question too, maybe we could throw the coaches and the casters to the wolves as well. Dude, like all I'm saying is like Lennon's a big piece in that one. Okay,
Dude,
he would be able to like really
Hester X
hold down the line
with his
with his
wrestling
wrestling moves.
background. Oh
Yeah.
man, that
Oh
gorilla's
fuck.
not gonna be up for long if we got the casting team
All
involved. That's
right,
for sure.
the gorilla's fucked. I've decided. The gorilla's fucked.
Yeah, well, let us know if you agree, and also if you want to suggest another silly headline like that, you can subscribe to our Patreon and be a part of the conversation in our Discord. And with that being said, let's get into the second most important piece of news outside of the NACL versus the Gorilla debate, and that was a graduation of one of our players to the LTA, not towards the end of the season, but in the middle of the season. Yuuji finally did it. As the jungler for DarkZero Dragonsteel got the call from Team Liquid, he'll be the sixth man as soon as he gets all the visa stuff organized and set up. Congratulations, first of all, to Yuuji. This is a long overdue opportunity for this player. I think a lot of people thought he was eligible and worthy to be promoted into the LTA going into this season, and now he finally has done it. Maybe on one of the strongest teams that any rookie is going to be on here in the LTA. So the question to you, Hawk, is being a six man with Umpty, how is this going to affect Team Liquid, and how is this going to affect Yuuji as his potential career continues to unfold and takes that next step?
Grapes, look at us for episode 100 doing the whole vertical right now. Definitely congratulations to Yuuji, because we've been saying he might be LTA ready ever since we started doing Salty Runback back in 2023 when he was on FlyQuest alongside Spyrax and Grapes. I know you in particular were during Spring Split. You were like the Yuuji Spyrax believer. You had like FlyQuest winning the whole playoffs or something from the 5th seed with that mid jungle, and Yuuji
My
now
goats.
finally getting all the way to LTA, a long overdue opportunity as a 6th man. I will say, personally, like, just a tiny bit sad that we don't get to see Maryville make the run for CLOL. But, I mean, you got to do what you got to do. Team Liquid opting not to wait until the end of the split, and they need him now. I am really interested at how this is going to influence Team Liquid, because when I look at Yuuji specifically sliding into the roster, I think something that's so good for him is he would be surrounded by a lot of other veteran presence. And from what I understand about Team Liquid, not in a position where he immediately needs to carry as a leader, which is somewhere where we've seen a lot of other junglers falter when they get promoted from the NACL into the LTA specifically, right? But when I look at, he'll be playing alongside the likes of like Core JJ, Impact, APA, all players that have been very willing to be vocal and take up leadership, specifically looking at Core JJ. And to me, seeming like someone that would really be able to facilitate a new jungler and allow Yuuji to slot in the place of Umpty. Also, like, looking at, you know, like champion pool playstyle stuff, I do think like there are slight differences. To me, Yuuji a bit more of like an early game oriented player, a bit more of a carry oriented player as well. You know, just like slight differences that make the 6th man make sense. But I'm curious as to how much playtime Yuuji will actually get, because Umpty, for everything I have seen, now I'm gonna out myself right here, Grapes. I've watched 0 LTA North in this spring split so far.
There's a lot of League of Legends to be watching.
It's a lot of League of Legends to be watching. CLOL makes it a little difficult. So I've not watched like the first 2 or 3 weeks or whatever of LTA North. I vaguely know what's going on. From what I've heard, Umpty's been doing better in spring split so far. And I'm kind of wondering if this Yuuji pickup is more of like a hold a gun to Umpty's head kind of move, but we're not necessarily going to throw him into the lineup.
Well, we definitely know that was a part of it, because there were interviews with Spawn, interviews with Umpty himself, that they were talking about, you know,
nobody's
putting in
safe.
Potential replacements. Nobody's safe. I mean, the rumors and the kind of articles that have gone out about this situation have kind of said that Yuuji has been scrimming with the team, or like with Team Liquid, or in some sort of 6-man capacity for a while now, and this is their opportunity to officially kind of bring him into the fray, which is, again, a great opportunity for him. And I think I like this here for a player like Yuuji to just get that experience sitting behind a player like Umpty, and, you know, can sub in if needed, but even if he doesn't, I feel like he's still going to learn a lot from this experience. Being in that room, being a part of this coaching staff, learning from Spawn, from Umpty, from Core, from all these guys. I think that's going to be very helpful for a player like Yuuji, who at this point doesn't necessarily need to be curb stomping NACL games to grow as a player, to learn different things. Like, I feel like we all kind of understand what his ceiling is, and more games in the NACL aren't going to necessarily change our minds about that.
I mean, like, more games in the NACL maybe is even like more time to pick up bad habits, that kind of stuff. I completely agree with you. Like, at a certain point, cooking in tier 2 and being a pub stomper there longer is not making a player improve. And so I definitely think having the opportunity to go up to the LTA system. I'll also say I'm happy that Yuuji is going to be a 6-man on a great org like Team Liquid instead of going to a garbage team that's going to maybe torpedo his career. I mean, we've seen that happen.
And
quite
you
a
brought
bit.
up that point about, you know, having a jungler slot in that doesn't necessarily have to be the shot caller as a rookie to start things off. And I feel like a situation
or at
where we
least
might
doesn't
have
have
seen
the
that happen.
overwhelming responsibility to be so. Yeah.
I mean, think about the last like big jungle prospect that finally got that call up. It was Kenvi, right, in 2022 when he got the call in Immortals. You look at that roster, it was Revenge, Kenvi, PoE, Lost, and Ignar. PoE and Lost, definitely big veterans at the time, but I feel like not necessarily having that same pedigree of being shot callers, and I think that definitely did show in Kenvi's play. It never really looked like he was fully like coordinated or like on the same page with the rest of the squad, and unfortunately it led to a pretty tough situation for Kenvi on IMT throughout his time there. And so I'm hoping that we don't see something similar to that for Yuuji. And, you know, much like we saw APA kind of get thrust into a decent winning environment in Team Liquid and immediately find some success, I'm hoping we see similar things from Yuuji here. And even if he doesn't end up playing, that's honestly a better thing because it means that Umpty's playing pretty well. And that's a good thing if you are a fan of Team Liquid and if you are a fan of North America.
Yeah, I agree. My light couldn't make it all the way through episode 100, but hopefully Yuuji makes it further in the LTA. I overall agree with everything you're saying. I think on the point of like slotting into rosters as well, you know, I look at the Kenvi situation, and of course, notably, like the team didn't want to play around Kenvi. They kind of picked him up to be something maybe that he wasn't, right? And so, like, that's also definitely a consideration. I'm hoping Yuuji isn't put in that position. I even look at a player like XU, right, who has been on this Disguise team where a lot of people have said like the team kind of lives and dies by him. It was the same on Dig last year. And that goes to show like, okay, maybe XU does have the sauce here and there, but like perhaps too much responsibility on him to be that guy for the team when it just might be too difficult. Like somebody else needs to step up in that role as well. So all this to say, I think this is a great move for Team Liquid. They've picked up an incredible jungle prospect, someone that absolutely can light a fire under Umpty's ass and potentially step in and maybe carry them to international tournaments in the way that this org expects to do. But also for Yuuji, I mean, it's been a long time coming. He's going to a great organization, and even though it is disappointing that he doesn't get the magical last ride with Maryville, I think it's fair to say this is a good move for everybody.
We talked about the implications here for Yuuji, the implications for Team Liquid. Let's talk about the team that's losing one of the best players in the NACL and in CLOL, and that's Maryville / DarkZero Dragonsteel. We saw the Dragonsteel Light roster kind of play these last couple of regular season games, but the expectation is that Shimmer will be subbing in for this DarkZero Storm team once we get into the playoffs, and that'll be kind of the roster that is going to be run for both of the NACL playoffs and for the CLOL Top 4, which again will be going on this weekend with Maryville playing in the upper finals against Ole Miss. Obviously, Maryville was the big runaway favorites in CLOL. They were, I think, certainly the big favorites in NACL, despite the fact that there are that kind of top 3 big teams. So without Yuuji, where do you put the odds here for Maryville in both of those leagues? Are they still the runaway favorites? Is it going to be a bit more of a toss-up? Or maybe are they now the underdogs in either of these situations in either of these tournaments?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, I mean, Maryville, again, just to emphasize, like they were the overwhelming favorites in both of our leagues. And now which one's harder to win is absolutely the NACL, just because of the fact that Luminosity near Airport exists within the NACL when that is not a thing in CLOL, right? And dare I say, I don't think DarkZero are immediately the favorites to win NACL, at least. I think they're still like in that pack. It's really going to come down to how quickly can Shimmer improve. It's been a player we've been excited about, Grapes, over the last year or so as like maybe being someone that has the sauce. I talked about him a lot on the Reluminate roster that I thought was pretty underrated. And you know, I think he'll be able to slot into a point where DarkZero is at least still competitive. It is notably, as you said, not that like I thought DarkZero Light might be the players that kind of fill upwards for the NACL teams. Not going to be the case. Definitely not the favorites there. Definitely gonna be the harder one to win, but definitely still in the mix. I will say as well, the NACL is like the one I'm way less sad about for DarkZero / Maryville, just because I think most people did not expect Yuuji to make it all the way through the year in the NACL based on rumors I had been hearing. So like losing him in the middle of this split versus the start of the next one matters so much less, just because like, I mean, yeah, winning NACL this split would be dank, and like I'm sure they want to, but it doesn't matter too much. The one I am a bit more sad about is CLOL, but fortunately the easier one to win just given the level of competition. And Grapes, I think you and I have both agreed that Maryville are still the favorites to win CLOL, but just less overwhelmingly so. If they had the majority of the vote in their favor, like they had a 60%, 70%, 80% chance to win versus the field last time, I would say they just have a plurality now. Maybe I would give Maryville like a 40 to 35% chance to win the CLOL title, with kind of the rest of the teams having a much larger share of the pie at this point.
It's interesting you say that because I kind of disagree with you. I think that
Really?
the chances for MU are still very high, and I would give them the odds on versus the field still in
Okay.
CLOL and even maybe in the NACL. I know that obviously,
Even
you
after
know,
Winthrop just beat Near Airport, which is not something we talked about last time we did this episode.
well, that's maybe bad for CLOL, but that's good for the NACL, right? Luminosity and
That's true.
Near Airport have kind of had their fair share of struggles as of late. LG, I think, currently still have not kind of dropped a series to the big three, but they have dropped games specifically to Conviction and have looked vulnerable kind of against the rest of the pack.
Yeah.
And Shimmer has actually slotted in very admirably in the games that they've played so far. With
Which is not many.
Shimmer slotted in, which Shimmer slotted into the roster, which is 8 games total. 6 games in the NACL, or 6 games in CLOL, 2 games in the NACL against Apex Mission Impossible. They're 8-0. And obviously the opponents are going to get harder and harder as we go further and further into the playoffs. But I think Shimmer has actually been able to slot into this roster very nicely and actually provide a little bit of a different playstyle than even somebody like Yuuji. You know, things like the Nefiri really become popular for him. He was able to whip out things like the Udyr, like a lot of different stuff here for Shimmer that it seems like, you know, he's going to be able to slot in nicely. And even if he's obviously not as polished, not as solid of a player as Yuuji, remember that Zamudo, Sajed, and Zyko are still on the team. And Spyrax, right? Like, these guys, I think if you slotted them, if you did a top 20 ranking of like all the players still remaining in CLOL, I think all 4 of those players would be in the top 8 to 10. I think there's only a couple of players that really can contest them. And so with that being said, even if Shimmer is a bit of a downgrade, I still give Maryville probably 75% odds to win CLOL. And I think the odds for winning NACL probably around 50-50 at this point.
I mean, you definitely do bring up a good point. Like, especially looking at the solo lanes for DarkZero / Maryville. I mean, Spyrax and Zamudo have been on unbelievable heaters this entire year so far. Like, best top laner, best mid laner in NACL right now, in my opinion, by a pretty good margin as well. Like, they have been fucking disgusting. So, yeah, I definitely do concede that point. I think it'll be interesting. I mean, I definitely think this Maryville roster is still undoubtedly strong. Definitely going to be questions about how Shimmer does slot in. I think my biggest thing is we've just not seen much. Like, the strongest teams that Maryville has played against so far since that roster change are Apex Mission Impossible, as you said, and then also like Fisher College, which are good teams, don't get me wrong, but it's not the same caliber of teams that I think we're expecting to absolutely contend for a title, right? And so that's going to be the big question, is going to be, you know, can they, I think, string together this chain of victories that they've continued to have throughout the year? Because at the end of the day, it does only take one series at an opportune moment, which has been something that has hamstrung Maryville in the past.
Yeah, we got our full test of things potentially this weekend as Ole Miss / Supernova, certainly maybe another tough opponent that they will line themselves up against, and we'll see.
They play each other twice, don't they? Doesn't Supernova end their season against DarkZero today as we're recording? And then
Supernova ends against Luminosity. DarkZero is playing Winthrop, actually, which is
that
right
was
now,
okay. I confused my college teams. Never mind.
Well,
I mean, there's a chance that Winthrop and Maryville play each other twice.
I believe that Maryville or DarkZero are going to be running the light roster because they don't want to potentially like kind of spoil too much going in, because they've already locked in a good placement in the playoffs and things like that. So
right.
We'll get into all the CLOL stuff and the NACL stuff in a little bit, but let's move on real quick to a little discussion about Near Airport, one of the top teams that we do have in the NACL. I think we'll do more of a full recap of the regular season of this last week of games in our next headline episode, because there's just a lot of content that we have to go over right now, and the season still hasn't fully ended yet as we are recording. But Near Airport, while they did lose their last series to Winthrop University, the series against Blue Water that they played in previous times actually was with a bit of a different roster, as Doublelift and Biofrost were not available for various reasons last week. Sushee and Kelpo, 2 new players slubbing into the team and being a part of a 2-1 victory. Overall, are you excited that these prospects are getting looks here by a roster as hyped up as Near Airport? Or are you disappointed that Doublelift and Biofrost were not available to play for the full season?
Yeah, I mean, I am obligated based on things I've said on the show, which is my take for the longest time has been I want to see Near Airport not just do things for content and to try to like build their brands or whatever, but to actually in some way promote tier 2, tier 3 talent in North America. And I'm going to be honest, Near Airport has actually really impressed me with how they've done it. The ball knowledge as far as like all these players like that they're playing against has been surprisingly really good. And now bringing up especially a prospect like Sushee to just play a game on the roster, like this is such an amazing opportunity to build their brand, to give them stage time, and to just have so many more people get to see what these players are capable of. Now, I have no idea who the fuck Kelpo is, or at least I didn't until the series. And, you know, while I could sit here and bemoan that, oh, they didn't put in Mixture to the team, I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a player getting an opportunity to play on the big stage. And again, alongside Sushee, I think is someone that is absolutely deserving. Your Airport played against Sushee. We were praising Sushee for his performance against the team, despite the overwhelming defeat. And I just think this is like such a good move by Near Airport for exactly that reason, of that they are just giving an opportunity to someone that is absolutely deserving of it. And if even only temporarily, I don't think that NA needs to be all about the main cast all the time, if you will.
Yeah, and for Near Airport, like Doublelift had an opportunity to get a bag playing in a big influencer tournament, and honestly, I don't know if you saw, but this week they did actually do like a little League of Legends portion of this, and it got like a ton of viewers. Like Tyler One was co-streaming it, the Bouse was co-streaming it. Like this like influencer tournament with Ludwig and T1 and stuff like that. Like that's another way to grow the space and grow League of Legends in North America that is equally as important. And so seeing Doublelift being able to kind of transcend those spaces and both compete in the NACL, but also be a part of a tournament like this is very good.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he's missing out on this opportunity to do this other opportunity, not mad at him at all for that. And, you know, Near Airport still were able to pick up the win. Somebody like Sushee slotted in very well with the team. Again, also didn't know too much about Kelpo. He played some scrims with them when Biofrost was taking college classes, I believe, before the OQs. But this is the first time we got to see him in game action, and he seemed all right. And, you know, maybe more for them to come in the future. I don't know what exactly the future plans are for them, but remember, they also kind of warned us about this, that there were going to be days where certain people were going to be in and out. They were going to run with some subs. And I think this is the best way to do it for a team like Near Airport. So shout out to them.
I think I'm also proud of Near Airport too, because I think have done actually a really good job of carving out their own brand for what they're trying to do with their team. Like, and what I mean by that is they're not just trying to be NA Los Ratones. Because, you know, they're not trying to cosplay a professional team when clearly that's just not something that's within the wheelhouse for this squad. And so they've actually done, I think, a really good job of their branding. Like, so far, I think it's still like in its fledgling state. I'd actually be really curious if, like, in Summer Split, getting closer to the promotion tournament, if we really saw them kind of like go into overdrive, and maybe they've just been like testing stuff out in terms of the branding so far this split or whatever, but like they've had their own unique look, they've had their own unique style, and I've really appreciated like that they have tried to do something different, because ultimately maybe we could sit here and say that like the best option would be to try and be a pro team in NA Tier 2 and really legitimize everything and be NA Los Ratones. But you know, I think they've acknowledged that, hey, that's not going to be what our brand is. It's just not something we're able to do. And they've not tried to pretend to be that either. And they've blazed their own trail. I think they've done a really good job of having a certain look, a certain feel to the team that feels different. And so credit to, I think, the people that are you know, kind of at the helm for that. And to me, like, again, subbing in Sushee and Kelpo just feels like an extension of it, of like, we're not trying to be some ultra hype pro team. No, we're gonna be NA influencers, we're gonna be NA content creators, we're gonna promote our region as a whole. And part of doing that is giving young players an opportunity to just sub in for a game, show their stuff in front of thousands of fans.
Yeah, I mean, really happy with what Near Airport have been able to do for the space. I think that the whole idea of, like, you know, streaming POVs is getting more eyes on the NACL as well. Streaming scrims, posting on that YouTube channel that they have now that's been generating a decent amount of viewership, which is a really fun thing to see. I wonder if, as we get later into split number 2, if they want to maybe take it up a notch and continue to add to that level of content. That could be an interesting thing.
Right, exactly.
To see, like a boot camp going into playoffs to try to lock in a spot in that promotion tournament. That would be, I think, a really fun set of content. And, you know, it's not a situation where they necessarily have to do it now. You can save it to the end of the year and go for that big final push. I think that would be a really great way to end off the year for an experiment that I think has worked out very well for the space. So shout out to Near Airport. It's been a lot of fun watching them. Pobelter MVP. And yeah, we'll see how they do going the rest of the way, as you know, they did take a loss finally against Winthrop University.
It's Winthrop of all people. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Actually, to take a step back and reflect about the general state of both CLOL and the NACL in our next headline, where we are in a situation where in the CLOL bracket, the remaining teams left are Maryville, Ole Miss, UST, and Winthrop. Kind of the top 4 consensus teams that we had going into the season. And on the other side, in the NACL, DarkZero, Dragonsteel, Luminosity Gaming, and until this week, the airport, kind of being that consensus top 3 teams, only really taking series off of each other, which was, again, our default expectations coming into the season. Is it a bad thing that not enough teams were able to really punch up above their weight class and make their way into potential favorite situations?
It's a really interesting question because I want to separate them out a little bit because I also do think our expectations were slightly different between the 2 leagues. Because let's talk about CLOL first, where CLOL, we, yes, have like who we generally thought would be the 4 best teams in the league as the top 4 at the end of the year. But I think I want to make 2 things clear. One is that, yeah, we generally had them as our top 4, but I think not overwhelmingly so. Like, this was just the top 4, but we thought there were plenty of other teams that would be able to punch in, and we've seen that throughout this year, even throughout this CLOL tournament. I mean, we've seen Western take games off of both these schools, sending them down to the lower bracket. We've seen tons of teams at least take like single games here and there off of these schools, and they have looked not remotely immortal, really, with the exception of Maryville. Everybody else has dropped games here and there along the way. And I think something really important to understand about CLOL is like that the competitiveness of these teams against everybody else makes everyone look good. So even though, yes, they're the final 4 standing at the end, that just means that they were the strongest from the beginning, but every time a team punched into them, it just makes them look that much more hype. And then a team that punched into the teams that punched into them, it makes them look that much more hype. And I think like kind of the level of play almost trickles down from the top, if you can see what I'm saying, where having a really strong top side makes everybody else that is able to contend with them look that much better. And I think it really legitimizes the space. And so I don't see a problem really at all for CLOL that, like, yes, this is the top 4 we had at the beginning of the season, maybe the result that we expected, but Grapes, would you say this is necessarily like it was business as usual? It was the fashion that we thought everything would go from the start?
No, absolutely not. And I completely agree with you. Remember, a bit of a cherry pick stat that we have in terms of the top 4 teams in the preseason poll, because if you go week by week, definitely has not been the case. There were times where Ole Miss dropped out of the top 5, Winthrop dropped out of the top 5, USC and Maryville kind of stayed towards that top 2 a lot of the time, but there were times where people were wondering, like, do they really belong there? Is it fully unanimous? And so other than Maryville, all the other teams really have been contested, and I think the fact that we did kind of see some internal movement, teams like ISU, teams like Fisher, Northwood, St. Clair, Western, as we said, being in that conversation and taking series against different iterations of these teams almost adds to the story that we've, regardless of all that, have gotten back to the point where, these teams finally kind of persevered, they locked in, and now we're going to get matchups between like the top teams that we had expectations for coming into the season, right? Winthrop losing that first series to Western, but then going on this massive lower bracket run where they suddenly are picking up a ton of momentum is a great storyline. And I hope that we can continue to watch that here. I think it's a little different in the NACL space where there really hasn't been that high level of competition. Sure, Luminosity and Near Airport have dropped games here or there. DarkZero, Dragonsteel lost some games when the light roster is playing. But overall, overwhelming favorites kind of week in and week out. There is no situation where you would ever have one of those 3 teams outside your top 3 on a power rankings list if we went week by week and did them every time.
Yeah, and part of the thing too is we wrote off everybody that was outside of the top 3 basically from the word go. I mean, we had Near Airport, DarkZero, and Luminosity as just like the unbelievable favorites, and I don't think that's really changed. It's funny too because this week of games has made us look a little bit silly on that front again. Like Winthrop beating Near Airport, I think is actually a really big deal. That is the first series that one of these teams has dropped to not each other, right? And that's a really important thing to note, because even we can look at like Luminosity and DarkZero Light dropping games to Blue Otter or Conviction here and there, but that's all they are. Just dropping games is not inherently that doesn't mean the dam's about to break, right? At some point, like, somebody's still got to win, and it hadn't happened yet. So credit to Winthrop, first of all, for an electrifying win over Near Airport. Guys, turns out Denethor and Mobility are pretty fucking good. It's been like we
And you don't give that man Camille in game 3. Don't give
Denethor Camille in game 3. I've loved too. He's been willing to bust it out more recently on the current patch, which has been fucking sick. But anyway, but yeah, I think the NACL has felt so top heavy, and Grapes, I am willing to say I think it has been more of a problem there, just because, yes, as I was just saying for CLOL, like, it does make it, like, when, like, oh, Conviction took a game off of Luminosity, like, that's fucking hype. Conviction, they're making progress. Like, again, it's got that trickle-down effect of, like, hype goes from the top down and allows everybody else beneath the best teams to look good. But it's felt more sparse, and we've had a lot of games in this NACL season that have just sort of felt like business as usual. This one could have been an email. Like, I mean, we've struggled to come up with on Salty Runback like headlines for NACL, because we've had weeks where we just look at the 6 games and we're like, damn, that was 6 2-0s that were exactly what we thought they would be, and it's tough.
The tiers kind of have remained the same for the most part. We have the top 3, the kind of 5 or 6 in the middle, and then kind of our bottom 2 lining up here relatively safely and expectedly throughout the entire season. So, yeah, I think my mind has changed a little bit from the last time we did do this recording, now that Winthrop has beaten Near Airport.
It's something.
Maybe now that means that some teams are going to make things interesting once we get into postseason play. But I think for now, yeah, I think the watchability of the regular season definitely was hurt by that fact, but that's not necessarily a problem. It just means that we have some really, really good teams in the NACL, and it's going to become even more hyped when they do play each other for shots for the championship, and also, of course, for that promotion spot eventually here. But that's going to put a bow on our NACL discussion for now. We'll do a full recap of the end of the regular season, reflecting on all that and setting up the playoffs in our next episode. Probably early next week as we kick off our headlines once more. But let's move on to our discussion about CLOL. As the last time we talked, it was a top 16. We've whittled it down to 4 at this point. Starting things off with Winthrop taking on University of St. Thomas in that lower bracket semifinals. Today, Hawk and I, we're going to be casting that one, so make sure you tune in for that. Followed up by our winners finals in Ole Miss versus Maryville. A team that's not here, that maybe had the expectation of punching into that top 4, was Fisher College. They were a top 4 seed entering the tournament, but they did lose back-to-back series in last weekend's play against Maryville and then against UST. In a rather unconvincing fashion, they got 0-6 in their fizzle out of the tournament. And Fisher is one of the couple examples of teams that were not only playing in the CLOL tournament on the weekends that the championships were taking place. Fisher, St. Clair, Winthrop, Grandview, a lot of different squads were playing in other lands as well. Actually, one of them in NACC happening right now, although there's no teams that are currently in the top 4 that are in that event. But things like NACE Super Conference in Orlando, the CECC/Playfly Grand Finals that were in Texas this past week, certainly had some impact on some teams in CLOL, perhaps in a negative connotation. We saw teams like, play a ton of games on stage, suddenly going into setups that they're not familiar with and losing CLOL games that maybe we were expecting to see them win. So overall, Hawk, is that a problem that these lands are potentially hurting these teams' performance in CLOL? And is it worth it for these schools to be attending these lands if it means that their CLOL placement could be affected?
It's such an interesting discussion. I say that about every headline, but this one really is because it really does. Like, I am one of the first people that really has been wanting to increase the prestige of the main CLOL championship, but I've got to say, I think when I look at what is the point of collegiate esports as a whole, like why does it exist? To me, what it's really about is just giving a group of a very small group of extraordinarily gifted young people the opportunity to do something special and get an education while they're doing it, right? And to create memories to go alongside it. And when I look at that mission statement, I think these lands are definitely worth it, with the caveat that as long as you reconcile with the fact that it might hinder your performance in the main CLOL championship, It's absolutely worth it. Go make memories with your teammates. Go to a LAN and have fun. Do great things. Go win a championship there. Because I mean, when I look at the CLOL championship as a whole, yes, it is the big kahuna, but that's mostly just because it kind of always has been, and it has the most teams playing in it. But you know, that also means it's the hardest to win. It's the hardest to get to the LAN to in the first place, and it's the hardest to win that scholarship money for. So when I look at, you know, everything, every factor aside from just like that prestige of winning the CLOL trophy, it does fall short in some of those, you know, memory making categories, if you will. And so, I mean, as long as you're, you know, foregoing perhaps some of your odds to win that most prestigious title, I think it's so worth it to go to these other tournaments if you are a school. And I don't really see it as a problem.
Yeah, and this was a hard thing for me to kind of contextualize and deconstruct a little bit when thinking about this headline, right? Because to me, CLOL obviously the most important, right? Your national championships, that's, you know, the Riot sponsored event. It should be the thing that all these teams should be focusing on. Why are we hindering our opportunity by going to these lands, getting ourselves tired, playing too many games back to back, right? Like, why are we sacrificing that? But when you take a step back and actually look at, should it be the thing that people are prioritized most? The prize pool is down about 90% from what it was a couple of years ago. There's only 2 teams that attend the LAN. It's gone from 8 to 4 now to 2 for the last 2 years. And, you know, it's not even fully at the Riot Studios anymore. So those were kind of the big appeals of this being a full, like, the main priority for a lot of these schools. And now that opportunity kind of taken away, I can understand why maybe if you are a team like ISU or a team like Fisher that, you know, going to this LAN, getting these opportunities, getting the chance to make these memories is more important. And there's definitely the opportunity to do both, and I'm sure if you ask any of these teams, they don't want to necessarily be making excuses as to why they got knocked out early, or if that is truly the reason. But you know, if you wanted to fully win CLOL, if that was your main focus, then that probably would be a step that you would have taken to make sure that you can fully like lock yourself in for that. But I don't think that's necessarily a full priority for them, and I don't blame them whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think this is interesting because it also goes into what I think is the larger issue with collegiate esports right now, which is just that dilution of the space. And I think that's going to be one of the number one things that I think the college esports space is trying to solve, right? Which, like, obviously, yes, one of the big problems is also just like program solubility and sustainability and all that, but that's not directly at the mercy of like college organizers in terms of like the esports space. That goes up more to an institutional level. But when we look at like things that as a collegiate esports space we can't control, it is that tournament circuit, right? And I think there's sort of a paradox right now where I feel that NACE and CLOL and all the others competing with each other makes each other weaker because there is not that one pinnacle tournament that we all can look to really be the apex of everything. But I don't think either NACE or CLOL can exist in their current state independently because they are not strong enough on their own. NACE does a horrendous job of adding any amount of prestige or watchability to their tournaments whatsoever, but they do bring that LAN and that like tournament experience to the table. Whereas if you look at the other side of the coin on CLOL, they've really not done a good job with the user experience and innovating on the prestige, and really it feels like it's only gone downhill. However, it does still have that big accessibility level, and it has that big trophy at the end of the day that people still look to as being the pinnacle. Ask any director, any college player what tournament they want to win, they'll still say CLOL is at the top, but it doesn't bring those like intangibles, those enriching factors that make something else like NACE appealing. And so I really think that's going to be a big like problem that people try to solve, is like, how can we consolidate the space in a meaningful way that's not just cannibalizing each other, but also provides all of the check boxes that people want out of a collegiate tournament? Because I just don't think we see that right now, and it creates this imperfect world.
Yeah, I think some consolidation would be helpful. Obviously, like this is not the dream situation that we are putting ourselves in right now, where where neither league really has that perfect ideal situation. But You know, I think at the way this currently is set up, like if you're blaming a team for like going to a LAN instead of participating in this tournament, like or like fully focusing on this tournament, I think that's a little bit short-sighted, and
Yeah.
that's something that I had to deal with myself too, because I was thinking the same way. But now looking back, talking to some people that are involved, I think I'm kind of more aligned with that at this point. But talking about CLOL this would have been a full Salty Runback episode anyway, but it's episode 100. We got to keep going here. We
We're
got
gonna keep
5
going.
new
We got
headlines
10
for you
headlines.
to figure out here as well. Let's dive into the CLOL bracket a little bit more, Hawk, because it's been a really fun one to watch so far. Has the potential to exceed those expectations and exceed what we've already been able to see in this final weekend of games. What's been your favorite series that you've been able to watch so far, the most entertaining, and which potential future series has the chance to overtake that?
Tough ass question, man. There's been some crazy series. It's funny too. We had a lot of game 5s in the first weekend, and we're like, holy fuck, CLO's so competitive, it's gonna be insane. I feel like we've gone down a little bit on our rate of game 5s, but we've still had so many great stories to follow, especially looking at the first 2 weekends. Honestly, I feel like week 3 was like a little bit like business as usual in terms of the series that we saw. We are starting to get into like those more like really, really competitive series between the top teams though. I mean, I'm just gonna rattle off some series. Like, man, I think of like upsets and near upsets, like Western against UST, Western against Winthrop, Minnesota against Converse. Both the CSUN series were like fucking disgusting in the best way possible. Purdue Northwest against UST was another really good one. Like a lot of game 5s in there, a lot of really fun ones. We've had some near reverse sweeps. I'm trying to think of like other ones that were absolutely insane. I feel like we had another one in the upper bracket that I might be forgetting. That was a game 5.
St. Clair versus Fisher was a reverse.
That one was
sweep.
okay. Little bit stompier, kind of back and forth, made it, but still reverse sweep 5 games, still really exciting.
I think there's a lot of shout outs that you can give here. The UCI versus UHSP series that we get to cover on our channel was a lot of fun because
Yeah.
that was the first breakout from this Tactics team that nobody really had too many high expectations for, taking down a UCI roster that we thought maybe had some juice after playing a very competitive series and being very dominant in the West. You can say the UHSP against ISU series in a similar way. The 5-game series that were played by Northwood Weber State, St. Thomas, and Purdue Northwest, I think also kind of belong up there in some capacity. But my favorite series was actually the first one that we got to cover on the mainstream, and that was Northwood versus UCI so
It was a
far.
good series.
It was in terms of stakes, not necessarily the highest, obviously, as it was not an elimination match. It was the first round. Winner played Maryville, which meant you're probably not in a good position to win anyway. But if you are a fan of just good quality League of Legends between teams and players that you know very well, that was probably the closest, most competitive series, highest quality series that we've seen so far in the tournament. And it was 5 really close, really competitive games. Gorica and Instinct kind of going back and forth with each other. Will having a really good time in some games. Rosethorn having his number in the others. I really enjoyed watching that series between Northwood and UCI.
Yeah, I mean, it really was a great series. It was definitely high quality. It is a shame that UCI ended up going out so early. I mean, obviously it contributed to this fucking god Tactics run, so, don't get me wrong, but I like that UCI team. Right? What's up?
Respect for that, at least, right?
Yeah, no, definitely respect for that. But UCI, like, I got excited for them after that series, and after they went to the lower bracket, really thought they could do something. Especially, I remember after they took that game 3, because I watched the early game of that game 3, and I'm like, well, Northwood's going up 2-1, and then I came back to my computer about 10 minutes later, and UCI was like somehow winning the game, and I was like, wait, what the fuck happened?
Every game was a banger. Like every game went 35 minutes. It was like. It was so fun to cast. There were a lot of crazy team fights. Reppy had this crazy Azir play, and then Zhao Danny had a crazy Azir play in the next game. Oh man, it was great.
I definitely agree with you in terms of like pure like competitiveness and like quality of play. That one was probably the pinnacle. I'm really hoping we get that this weekend and maybe at the grand finals as well, because Grapes, maybe we can transition into the what is the best future series. Undoubtedly, the best future series is Ole Miss versus Winthrop, especially now that Winthrop has taken down Supernova in the NACL 2-1. Winthrop, congratulations to them locking up their spot in the playoffs after, I'm going to be honest, I was a massive doubter about a couple of weeks ago. I said I thought they were going to get relegated, and Supernova still managing to hold themselves, their feet from the fire, and not get sent to the promotion relegation tournament as well. But these two teams, Grapes, I think you've said it, 9-9 against each other in competition throughout this year, which is fucking psychotic, man. And this is the best rivalry in League of Legends anywhere right now. I don't care how much of a ball knower you are. I don't care how much you care about CLOL. If you just want to see two teams with deep history go fucking band for band with each other for probably 5 games, it's Winthrop Ole Miss. These two teams, they are the rivalry of all rivalries. They know each other in and out, and this is absolutely the best possible series remaining in CLOL.
We have to get there first. We need Maryville to beat Ole Miss, send them to the lower bracket, and we need Winthrop to beat UST, which is not necessarily a full guarantee at this point. But I would totally agree with you. Honestly, any matchup that we get in that lower finals for that last spot into the LAN is going to be intense. You either get Maryville in a finals rematch from 2021, 2022, or 2023 against either USC or Winthrop, whoever it ends up being, or you get that matchup that you were talking about, the El Clasico, where they're 9-9 since UFest in 2024's fall, or you get Shogo against his old team to go to LAN. So there's a lot of really fun storylines here.
Oh my god.
On the line.
See,
that lower finals
benefit.
is going to be great.
That's the benefit of the top 4 being the big 4 as well, because the storylines write themselves so easily for these teams that have so much history against each other. Like, it's Maryville against their boogeymen en route to reclaiming their dynasty, or it's Shogo against his old team, or it's just like the greatest rivalry ever. It just does not get better than that.
Well, here's a question for you, Hawk.
What's up?
You mentioned that you don't think Maryville are necessarily the runaway odds-on favorite to win this tournament anymore. Kind of where are you ranking these teams based off of how likely you think they have the chance to go and make it into that LAN, make it to that finals, even win CLOL in Raleigh?
I think Maryville definitely makes Raleigh. I mean, I said this. If they're losing in grand finals. I still believe that. I don't think they're losing to Ole Miss in this upper bracket final. We'll see. I think it's a pretty contested matchup. Looking at these two teams specifically, we've got I think bottom lane slightly Ole Miss favored and jungle likely a bit Ole Miss favored as well, Kiel versus Shimmer, but neither of them feel overwhelmingly favored, and that is on the contrary to, I think the solo lanes for Maryville are just way stronger than what Ole Miss brings to the table. We've seen a lot of struggles from Asila and Stray throughout 2025, and we just talked earlier on the show about how good Zamudo and Spyrax have been throughout this year. And so I expect that to be a huge advantage that Maryville has in this series. And I mean, I'll at least give Ole Miss a game or two for Shogo Rhino, but I just think that Ole Miss is going to struggle to string it together for 3 games if Zamudo and Spyrax are on form, right? And so I give Maryville 80% odds to make Raleigh just because of I think they have a 60-70% chance to win this series, and then they'll get another chance if they lose, right? And they'll be favored in that series as well. Ole Miss, I definitely do think is my number 2. Dare I say, I think Winthrop's my number 3. Especially, they look like they're peaking right now. Maybe Winthrop could be a number 2.
I was gonna say, I think I have Winthrop number 2.
I think I have UST as being cooked. I think UST's pretty cooked. I don't think they can do it.
I don't think it's over. There's definitely a chance they make it, but given that we've seen the other teams have more recent success. Ole Miss and Winthrop have had more recent success in the lower bracket. UST seems like they're still kind of faltering, still struggling throughout a majority of the games that they're playing. They haven't looked clean really in any series that they have played so far, since their opening matchup against Converse in week 1. So a little worried about them, but if they could play a scrappy series, they could go on a run themselves. I could definitely see it happening with the players that they have on their team, Bradley and Array specifically. But I think I go Maryville, Winthrop, Ole Miss, UST. Call me crazy, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I mean, Winthrop's been looking good. Looking at potential finals matches too, Grapes. Obviously, the best one again would be Ole Miss Winthrop if Ole Miss beats Maryville and then Winthrop makes the run. I mean, holy shit, the NACC matchup in Raleigh that would bang way too hard. But I mean, outside of that, I think Maryville Winthrop would be my pick for best grand finals, just because of I think the history between those two teams is undeniable, and to see them play in the finals again after all these years would be a treat. That would be a treat.
Both programs looking for their first title in 4 years for Winthrop and 6 years for Maryville, which is crazy to say at this point. But rematch of the finals, that would be definitely a fun watch if it does end up coming down to it. Another person who is going to try to get into that finals to move on to our next headline is Shogo, the bot laner for Ole Miss, who has really put the team on his back, I would say, over the last couple of weeks in CLOL specifically. Obviously, the NACL hasn't necessarily gone up to plan for them, but for CLOL's concern, Shogo is putting up another legendary performance here and has put their team in Ole Miss's best ever position so far in CLOL top 3, with the potential to go even further to that land as they play in that winners finals and will have another opportunity, even if Maryville do take them down. If Shogo wins this tournament somehow with Ole Miss, with this new situation that's been opened up with Maryville's roster not looking as strong, and with, of course, all of the run that Ole Miss has been on and as of late in CLOL, would Shogo's third trophy justify him being the CLOL greatest of all time?
Yeah, I certainly think so. He would be the only person to have 3 titles alongside Sasuke, the legend of Maryville and Winthrop. And really the question that I ask to answer this question is, if Shogo wins his 3rd title in 4 years, what accolades does Shogo not have that Sasuke does? Because we look at their runs and they're so similar. 3 titles in 4 chances. Sasuke did it for 5 years, but 4 chances. And on 2 different teams. And I wasn't around for a lot of Sasuke's run. I was only there for 2021. So maybe I'm not giving him enough credit, but I look at the runs and Sasuke is a great player, undoubtedly, and deserving of that title of CLOL GOAT right now, just by virtue of having those 3 titles. I mean, fuck, no program has 3 titles. Sasuke is literally the only entity in League of Legends that has 3 college championships, right? Which is that's a crazy accolade to have. And that would continue, by the way, if Shogo wins, because then Shogo just has his 3rd ring and nobody else, right? But I mean, I look at what Shogo's done for the teams he's on. It feels like every year Shogo is the team. And they live and die by how he's able to do. And obviously, yes, there's amazing supporting players around him the entire time. But, I mean, he is the guy for Ole Miss this year. He was the guy for Ole Miss last year and UST in the years prior. I just don't think you could not give him GOAT status if he wins.
Yeah, I think just the big carry potential that this guy always has. The fact that he can be a game warping player kind of in every single situation
He is a game warping player.
Yeah, he'll always be the lead carry for a team that he's on. And I think what would further add to this is if he does win this championship on Ole Miss, a team that is considered an underdog against Maryville. I think even when you consider that Yuuji is no longer a part of the team, that is still definitely going to be a really fun situation for Shogo, and would add to that legacy of his, where he's not only able to win on the teams that he's considered to be the favorite in, he can also win when he's the underdog, can go and take down the Titans like Maryville, who's been at the top of collegiate and at the top of semi-pro for the last year or so. And that would be a really fun situation to see Shogo kind of come into fruition with. Honestly, I would say even if Shogo just makes the finals again and gets his chance at a title and plays a competitive series and plays well, that could leapfrog him over Sasuke at this point. I think we have him as, being the player above him and kind of the one that's clearly above him right now. It's tough. Possible. It depends on how it looks, I think.
I think it depends on what you need to be a GOAT, because I look at, does it mean just the best player or the one with the most accolades, right? And I know that sounds like a goofy question, but
I think it's a little bit of both.
I think already Shogo might be, it probably is, the best player over his tenure in CLOL ever. I think
on an extended run, right? Because
right.
Players like Surdy who only were here for a year.
Sure. But even then, Shogo's been one of those guys. And so I think as far as the best player to come through CLOL historically, it might already be Shogo, but I think for me, I think Shogo has to win to leapfrog Sasuke just because of the uniqueness of that accolade. Like I said, I just don't think you can take away from Sasuke the fact that he's the one with 3 titles. And even though Shogo might be the best, you can't be the GOAT if you don't win those titles when somebody else has, right? And I think that's kind of my feelings on that.
I don't
I
know.
don't know if that's a hot take.
Bill Russell's got 11 rings. Yogi Berra's got 10. I don't think anyone are considering them the goats of their respective sports, right? And
I
so
mean,
it's about
it's tough.
eras. It's about timelines.
It's tough. I see what you're saying. You know, LeBron versus Jordan as well. But
Yep.
I mean, dude, I didn't watch all these. I only saw LeBron. So like, I didn't even exist when all the rest of these guys played, right? It's tough. I think it's an interesting discussion. At the very least, Grapes, can we agree Shogo right now is number 2?
Well, who you got in your top 5? I think this is the next part of the question. Column are also suggesting this one. This is like our part 2 Patreon headline here.
This is
and
tough.
also it goes with the fact that some of the profiles came out about some of the players in top 4 for CLOL, and Shogo did say he wants to be remembered by being the CLOL GOAT. And so that's what kind of prompted this discussion here. Who's in your top 5? Because I think I have my list.
So we actually argued about this in the Salty Runback Discord as well. Quite a bit, like a few months ago. I have the receipts pulled up. February 13th, 2025, me, Shibby, Sean, and a couple others argued about who like your top 10 CLOL players of all time would be. And we, after some argument, agreed that Sasuke's number 1, Shogo is number 2, and then Robbie Bob is probably number 3 because he's also got that 2 titles, and he has been a consistent performer across multiple years. It's honestly a shame that we don't see Robbie this year. Dude, if he comes in for support for Trevor and wins his 3rd, maybe he could get that GOAT status. He probably would have it, but that's probably the top 3 because it really starts to break down when you move forward. You know, you've got guys like Porsche and Bobchin that are the others with 2 titles, but I don't think we inherently consider them to be necessarily like the best CLOL players of all time. We've got guys like Winnie that have been consistently fantastic, and although they don't have those 2 titles that the others have, they have the longevity and consistent level of individual performance. Also looking at someone like Niles, RBM, Clyde, Scary Jerry. Those are some of the other names that were tossed around. Aaron. But I think if we're looking at a top 5, it's probably, for me, some combination of obviously Sasuke, Shogo, Robbie Bob, and then I'd probably throw like Winnie, Niles, Porsche into the mix after that.
Bobchin at 5, Robbie Bob at 4. Or actually, no. Winnie 5, Bobchin 4, Robbie Bob 3, and then Shogo and Sasuke is my list, I think, right now.
That seems, yeah, I think I'm good with that list.
Winnie, I think, has always been like a big part of any CLOL team that he's been on, whether it's with Western or with SLU, and then winning that championship at the end, I think definitely adds to his legacy a little bit. Bobchin
to me, Winnie was like the Ray Lewis of CLOL. You know what I mean? Like he got his last ride title after like being a fighter on a top tier team for ages, and he's like the big leader, the spiritual leader of the teams.
Yeah. And then I think the rest of them pretty self-explanatory as well. Robbie Bob getting his 3rd championship would be like a wild plot twist if that doesn't happen.
That would be fucking insane.
Yeah. Well, make sure you tune in to CLOL this weekend. I think that's starting today as we are releasing this episode. And you can see just how well Shogo is able to perform and if he can get on to Raleigh and try to cement his GOAT status. But a couple more topics here as we've definitely had our fair share of conversation here on Salty Runback in our episode 100. ACL is continuing to go on, and the OQ roster deadline has just closed, meaning that we are about to get 64 new teams to participate in this new qualifier tournament. I think 4 teams are going to get the opportunity to qualify into the promotion tournament to play against the bottom 2 in the NACL to get a spot in split number 2. Now, we can talk about any potential prospective rosters here right now, Hawk, but out of specifically teams that have been playing in ACL, which is, of course, wrapping up their regular season play, their Swiss stage play, which one of these rosters would you like to see in the promotion tournament?
There's a few. I mean, God, I love ACL because there's so many fun teams that we get to see. I think the one for me is the one that I said has a washed 2021 topside with an exciting bot lane. I'm Conviction Star with it's Lawrence, Maddie, Doxa, Nightstar, and Pika Pika. And obviously I'm being a bit harsh on their top side. It's just funny to say, like, damn, that top side would have been so hype in 2021. But that's like a fun team. It's guys that have had like success here and there over the course of tier 3, and I don't think they'd be like an instant favorite to win the whole thing, but I think they'd be one of those teams that's sort of like a dark horse top 10. They could make a dog fans Apex Mission Impossible type run.
Well, they're right now undefeated in ACL, and you know ACL is considered right now to be that regular season league for OQs, right? And so it's a situation where if you are, playing in this league, it gives you good opportunity, good practice to continue to, take that into the OQs. And I don't know how many more strong rosters we're going to see that actually aren't competing in the ACL right now. So if right now Conviction Star is first, I hope they're able to compete together. I don't know what exactly that plan is, but if they're able to play together under a unique name, that isn't Conviction, because I don't think that will necessarily be allowed because Conviction is currently in the NACL. That would be a really fun team to watch, and I think honestly a team that has a good chance to make it into the tournament at this point, given you just like where they are currently placed in the ACL league in the regular season, undefeated at 4-0. There's the right answer and the wrong answer here that I'm going to give you here. The right answer is the Citadel, who is competing again in ACL. They have run it back with Bradley. They're playing now with Instinct as well. Kenvi, Porsche, and Diamond round out their team. So slightly different from the original roster. Basically a UST topside with Instinct and Diamond as their bottom lane. They're currently undefeated as well. I think in terms of just pure name power and brand names and pure player potential, like that is the team that is certainly one to watch. But then after that, you got D Esports, who they're 3-1, but they got Sanchovies, they got Hamza, they've got Redemption even from Ducky Getters. So a lot of fun names on this team. I hope that they stream a lot of their OQ run, because if they do play in it, it's going to be really fun to watch.
Dude, I mean, that team, like, kind of got some shooters too. Like, the fun thing about it is it's not just like a creator team, but there's actually a couple players that I'm like, damn, I'd really like to see them play in OQs, right? I even look at like their subs. They got like Vacan, they got like Anda, who's Emerald 1 on the team. Like, I don't know if they would play in OQs, or maybe they'd make their own team or whatever. I don't know what the situation is, but I think it's really fun. Obviously, the Citadel is like, I think most of us expect them to promote into the NACL now that they hopefully don't fumble the bag in the upper bracket immediately this time.
Other quick shoutouts as well. We love Supernova Dark Matter here. Klexo, Winking, and Doubtful on that team. I don't know. They're doing all right, I guess, so far.
You love your boys.
I love my boys. And Next Level Esports is another team that I'm hoping to see play. They have Alcalamity and Saga Wabe as their bot lane. Kitsuo, Robbie Bob making a return to their team. They have Fiji up on the top side. If they participate in that tournament, and if they go through the OQ, it's going to be a fun watch.
You know it's a good time when you got a Kitsuo Robbie team. As much as things change, they still stay the same, Grapes. Maybe this brings us into some of our nostalgic headlines, as we can talk about some of our favorite teams and players that we've gotten to cover now through 100 episodes of Salty Runback. We started at a time when there were 16 teams in the fledgling NACL, 6 provisional teams, 10 challenger teams that were affiliated with LCS organizations. And over the last 2.5 years, we have covered basically every step of the way, from NACL to now CLOL is something we've picked up over those couple of years, and Tier 3, even a little bit of LCS and beyond. Kitsuo Robbie teams aside, Grapes, who are some of our favorites?
Oh man, there's so many really fun rosters that I look back on and I'm like, man, this is a fun time. This was a fun time. In terms of the teams that played in that first split of the NACL, I got a nice soft spot for the AOE esports team that did okay kind of throughout their run, but then in the promotion tournament played a banger best of 5 against Maryville that they ended up winning. You remember that was a period of time where the NACL teams were actually living together, like in California or something. And we saw little videos of like Winnie and Sky after they won the series. Like they ran over to each other's PCs. They were cheering. They were so hyped up about beating Maryville. That was such a fun series, such a fun promotion tournament for us to watch. Other shout-outs, Lit Esports, both in 2023 spring when they had the Sajed and Chaye conveying team with Munchie, and in the summer, obviously, where they went on that crazy run with Dragoon and Kisno. Every iteration of Lit Esports was a joy for me to follow in 2023.
Dude, that Lit team was so fun. It's kind of a shame how they went out, because I remember saying they were doing branding right as well. It feels like Blue Otter has really carried the torch well, though. So, I mean, credit them, dude. I mean, we got to give a shout out to Keyshawn Dragoon. He is. We want to talk about miracle promotion runs. He is a legend of the game for Tier 3. I have to say. I know he has one of your favorite caster calls as well, Grapes. The Dragoon Smash Pentakill in their promotion tournament. I mean, that was
so long ago,
dude.
Wow.
I mean, that's iconic right there. The Prince of Promotion Sudsy too. We got the TikTok Tony Top team with
That was a
Levitate and
great
Snow
one.
too.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was
it
pretty
sucks.
iconic.
It's so unfortunate that a lot of the teams that like we want to hype up and talk about, like they end up getting met with like really like kind of unfortunate endings. Like Team Ambition in 2023 summer. Like I want to
Yeah.
talk about how great they were, but the ownership kind of like sold the bag on them at the end of the day there.
All the AoE teams
All the
as
AoE
well.
teams. Yeah. Unfortunate, but you know, the good part about Salty Runback is we always can talk about the good parts of these teams, the fun memories that we had for them. Those are definitely some of my fan favorites from back in the time back in time. If you guys have any favorites as well, let us know down below. Do you have any other shout outs here, Hawk? I know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, like, kind of going off of what you said, I would love to hear like people's like favorite memories of the last couple of years. Not just Salty Runback related, but just like any League of Legends related. Like, what are some of your favorite stories that either we've gotten to cover or we haven't? I've just got to give a shout out to CLOL as well. Like, dude, Ole Miss, Maryville, Winthrop in particular. Like these three teams, I feel like are just like the boys at this point. You know,
Yeah,
UST,
blue
we got to
roster
watch.
too.
We got to watch
Bad.
and be a part of their win. Slew, we got to watch and be a part of their win. I mean, I think it's funny because we kind of started getting into CLOL in 2023 because we were both in it a little bit in like 21 and 22 like as fans, and I know you were a part of the broadcast team for some of 2022's run, but you know, we were like, damn, there's this like cool thing right here, and this would be a great thing to do for us to kind of like be involved more, and there's like a void of content in the space. And I mean, to be completely honest with you, I think we started getting into it for like selfish reasons, but man, we've been encapsulated in this space or enthralled by this space like so quickly because CLOL is my favorite thing to watch now. It's not close.
Yeah, like honestly, I'll watch again. Like as you said, I've watched probably CLOL more than NACL qualifiers or LTA at this point in
No,
terms of
same,
North American
easily,
League of
easily.
Legends. Obviously, of course, we gotta keep track of all of them, but that's like the one where I've got a soft spot in my heart for right
Yeah.
now.
I watch
And
100%
it's a
of
really fun
CLOL
roster.
games unless I like literally cannot. Whereas like NACL and especially LTA, it's like more of a I'll watch when I can. So NACL specifically, I'll like go back and watch tape, especially if I have a cast. But no, this place is. I mean, CLOL's amazing. I'm trying to think of like any other shout outs, especially from Salty Runback era. I mean, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, there's some
dude,
other like good throwbacks from
fucking
before Salty
Morningstar
Runback.
White. Morningstar White.
What a run they were on, right? Oh
That's
man.
that's a
The fact
big
that all these
yeah.
ripple effects of like Pulsar into Morningstar White that led to Blue Water rising up, that led to all this and that. It's
Dude, I
such a
knew Polestar were
fascinating
ops all the
little.
way back in 2024 spring, man. That's all I'm saying.
Oh man. The Ducky Getters as well. Shout out to
Ducky,
them out
oh, the
there.
Ducky Getters. Oh, I can't believe I
Yeah.
almost forgot about them. What
All
a
that to
team that
say,
was.
we've got to cover a lot of really fun teams, and we've got to do a lot of fun stuff here on Salty Runback, because this will be the last thing that we do before we close out the episode for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know it's a bit of a longer one, but we really wanted to make our 100th episode special, an exciting, fun opportunity to both talk about all the news that we ended up missing out on over the last week and a half, but also, reflecting a little bit at the end of the day here. Gun to your head, Hawk. Favorite episode out of the 100 that we've done right now?
Oh, fuck me. Single favorite? Okay, I have an answer, actually. And it's
Yeah.
honestly not even because it was necessarily the highest quality episode, but I think Salty Runback live from Boise with Chew and Clerky.
That was great.
In the studio. That was so fucking cool.
I love this. I love the live episodes that we've been able to do together. It's only been like 2 or 3. We did
most
one
of them have been scuffed as fuck.
We did one in LA where our camera didn't work. We did one in Boise, which it did work, and that was actually a very good one. Shout out to the Boise crew over there.
One in New
And then we did
York
one
where
in
I
New
was
York
on like
City.
2 hours of sleep.
Yeah. Oh, we gotta do another one of those soon. I hope that we do.
Well, I mean, I know you and I are both going to Raleigh for reasons maybe of our own at the very least, but we will at least be in Raleigh. So I feel like there will be an avenue for another live Salty Runback. But just that Boise one was so special to me because like we had people that like wanted to produce our show for us, and it was, I mean, like I have to say another huge thank you to the Boise team for that, because that was cool. That was really cool. Getting to be a part of that. And also, like, I mean, Dan and Nick are both like very insightful people in the NACL, right? Like, or sorry, in the NACL and CLOL, and they had a lot of good things to say. So it was just like a good episode, good conversation, and also just like the memory of that, I think is awesome.
Yeah. In terms of like experience overall making a Salty Runback episode, that definitely has to go up there. Big shout out. Like that's a great shout out because I honestly kind of was gonna forget about that if I'm not gonna lie. But another really cool part of Salty Runback is the fact that we get to do unique iterations of discussions and create different games and things like that. Salt Street Bets kind of sticks out as
Yeah.
like the fan favorite that we bring back every split. Some other fun stuff and other fun games that I've really enjoyed doing. The building the NACL rosters that we did going into the 2024 offseason, where we tried to pick like a team of veterans, a team that was gonna like win everything.
Yep.
That was a really fun episode. I know you weren't a part of it, but the OQ draft and the offseason NACL draft that we did with the Salt Mine guys and Shivy, that was a lot of fun. And I love the opportunity that we have
Rip
to
Luminosity Smash. That's what I would have done, man.
Yeah, that would have caused a lot of drama if you decided on that right now.
All the Gumayushi stands would have come from my head.
Yeah. I also love that we've gotten the opportunity to talk to some important people in this space. You
Yeah.
mentioned Clerky and you mentioned Chu. We've talked to LCS players at this point, like Surdy, in a couple of our episodes recently. That was featured on the LTA broadcast, which was really cool. We've gotten a chance to talk to Whipley, who's the product lead behind NACL, and kind of pick his brain about some of the decisions that they're making over at Riot, even though we don't necessarily always agree. And then, of course, every time we bring a player in, is always a joy. And seeing what they were like when we interviewed them to what we have,
Yeah.
what they've turned into now and where they've continued to go on their journeys has always been a really fun story.
Dude, I love all of the interviews because one, like, we've never had like a bad interview, I think, on this channel when I look back at like the player interviews we've done, but also we get them to do some of the dumbest shit. Like Pocus, dude, I love the Pocus interview so much, making him like
great.
fill in the Sporkle with all of his old teammates, or like Denethor. I'm like, hey man, what are your favorite champions to play against and least favorite? And the first time we had Surdy on the show, when I talked to him about like some matchup stuff, and he just spouted like insane ball knowledge like on Salty Runback at the drop of a hat. Like, and we've had tons of good ones. I mean, like, so many friends of the show have been made by people we've had on Salty Runback, both also for the podcast, but then I also like look at, I mean, Tier 3 Tonight was such a huge driver of content for us as well. I mean, that was the start of Salty Runback becoming a fully fledged production company, something we've been attempting to expand over the last couple of years to mixed success. But, like that's something we've been really wanting to promote more. Grapes, I do want to point out too, I love the player drafts, because you talk about, the player drafts and also Salt Street Bets as kind of being recurring segments. And I've got to say, I really like that we do both of them, because even though I get absolutely destroyed in Salt Street Bets every year or every split, I'm pretty sure usually my player drafts tend to age a little bit better. So I'm glad we have something to balance it out,
Hey, I think you won fantasy when we did it last year too. So
yeah,
you get that one.
So I usually, when it comes down to picking up, I just love all the segments where like we just get to stan players, basically, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And be like, hey, who are the people we're like huge fans of like right now? Because it also changes so frequently. Like obviously we have the players that we like all through time, and that number kind of only continues to go up. But every time someone pops off, it'll be like, holy shit, like I want to invest in their stocks and talk about them right now.
Last thing before we wrap up the show, any really poorly aged takes that you wanna like bring to light right now? Because I know we've had our fair share, so now's our chance to kind of expose ourselves a little bit.
I like can't even remember, dude. I have so many awful takes on the show. I'm sure people in the comments will tell me, what's your favorite like ice cold Hawk take? Because I've had a lot. I've had some hits, like Scary Jerry should go to the LTA at some point or shit like that, but I've also had some bad ones. And that's the beauty of it.
Our first ever episode, I'll pull up the screenshot right now. We did a tier list of how good all the rosters, or how much we liked the build of all the rosters in the NACL.
Wasn't necessarily how good they were.
Yeah, not how good they were, but how much we liked the build of the roster. And I had Cloud9 Challengers last in the bottom tier, and they ended up winning the split and becoming like the back-to-back champions, and like actually all being players that ended up having more successful careers.
But they were boring while they did it.
Fair enough. I did a fly quest all the way at my S tier, so shout out to Yuuji over there. Even more
Yeah, I
recently,
had Team
our
Liquid. I think I had Team Liquid first and Fly Fam at my top, by the way. So, or maybe it was Team Liquid Challengers. I don't know. I had
no, it was
mine
it
didn't
was
change
CL, it
grade
was CL
or
first.
age grade either. Yeah.
Even recently, our player rankings slash power rankings for this season didn't work out the best. We had very high opportunity, very high expectations for Blue Otter and for Ole Miss, and they're both teams that finished out of the playoff picture. So shout out to CCG and for Conviction for kind of proving us otherwise there. But yeah, let us know what your worst take is. We've been going on for a while. I think it's time to wrap things up. 100 episodes of Salty Runback. So once again, we thank you immensely for all your support throughout the years, and we hope you continue to give it to us as we continue on in our journey for this split and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's wild. And the start of 2023, I was not on a broadcast, and Grapes, you were just on the tier 3 kind of skeleton crew for 2023 spring. And we started this podcast as a way to just keep talking about the space because we liked it that much. And honestly, I think Salty Runback has done much, much more for us than we would have ever imagined. And it all is thanks to everyone that has just enjoyed it and appreciated the work that we put in because it's been pretty amazing. I think through all of the thick and thin of esports and how much Grapes and I spend, how much time we spend venting to each other about how much everything kind of sucks, this is something that we can just do and be proud of. And so thank you to everyone that's been a part of it. Please support us in any way you can on all of our platforms at Salty Runback NA, as well as in our Discord and at Hawkcasts at Speedy Grapes. Let us know some of our ice cold takes over the years. And as we've always said, be sure to take them with a grain of salt. I've been Hawk, that's been Grapes. Thank you all for 100 episodes of Salty Runback. Here's to 100 more. Have a good one.